Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio, and with brilliant stars on the horizon coming out at the end of this week, it's probably about time we counted down the top 20 cards from the set. And actually, before we get going, I do need to give a little bit of a note here. I'm not going to be putting Raikou and Entei on this list, because they are just Suicune. Different typings, retreat cost, and HP, but they're the same card as Suicune, same attack, same ability. We had that card 2 sets ago. Clearly they're great cards, but it just seems a little bit like it's the same card we had 2 sets ago. Do we need to put it on this list as well? If you want to put them on the list and pretend they're new cards, I would probably put these somewhere at the bottom end of the top 10, around about 9 or 10, somewhere like that. But honestly, I don't think it's a great idea to put them on the list. We just looked at Suicune. So going back to the cards that did make the list and looking at the set as a whole, it is incredibly good at the top. All the cards at the top are absolutely proper job, over the top, nuts good. Not quite so good down the bottom end, so let's start off at number 20 with MOLTRES. There are a few cards that just missed the list that I think you could justify popping on the list. Charizard V-Star, big powerful card with a bunch of potential. Torterra is a stage 2, which is quite interesting. And certainly Growlithe with its ability to search out grass Pokemon is awesome. So I'm putting Moltres in at number 20, but I don't feel great about the bottom end of this list. Moltres for a single fire energy does 20 damage, but if there's any damage counters on it, it does 90 instead. Now, it doesn't hit for weakness, which is very sad, and I understand that, but you combine it with that newly released MAGMA Basin, more on that in a moment, and you've basically got get the stadium out and an energy and a discard, basic Pokemon hitting for 90 damage. In the early game, especially against evolution decks, that can be pretty devastating. In at number 19, we got a trio of cards, but they're all the same. It's the free WORMADAM cards. For me, these are among the most exciting cards in the entire set. This is a deck that I'm going to be looking to work on. They've all got Matron's Anger, 2 colorless energy, 30 damage base, plus 10 more for each Pokemon in your discard pile. We've seen this deck before. We've seen Flareon, which is a deck I managed to go and take 5th place at the largest tournament in Europe with. Stupid misplays. And we've seen it with Vespiquen, which is another deck that has seen a whole bunch of success. This is a proven formula, and we're in a different format now. And maybe it's not going to end up being as good, and if it isn't, it isn't. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just excited about this, and I feel alright putting it in at number 19. In at number 18, we've got Marnie's Pride. Now, this is one of those that I just don't know quite how I feel about it. It's a supporter card that attaches a basic energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. And it would be absolutely fair to turn around and go, well, hang on a second, Wassy, isn't that pretty gosh darn similar to BD? And doesn't BD see very little play? Although it has seen some play, incidentally. I've seen it popping up in some winning lists. Yeah, that's all fair to say, but it's extra energy attachment, a bunch of decks like playing from the discard. I do like it a little more than BD because you don't have to have the energy in your hand, so I'm putting it near the bottom of the list. In at number 17, we've got Team Yell's Cheer. Also, down the bottom end of this list, don't worry too much about the ordering, you could mix this up and I wouldn't be offended. You shuffle up to 3 in any combination of Pokemon and supporter cards other than Team Yell's Cheer from your discard pile into your deck. It's basically just a way for those control decks, disruption decks, call them what you will, to get all of their annoying supporter cards back, and that is going to help those kind of decks very much indeed. But not as much as Roseanne's backup, which I'm putting at number 16 and probably should be higher, and I know a bunch of people are going to think it should be. Because what you do is shuffle a Pokemon from your discard pile into your deck, and a Pokemon tool, and a stadium, and an energy. And it doesn't say basic energy, it just says energy. And you can do one of them, or you can do all 4. I'm not putting this any higher because I don't know how many decks are really going to get the full use out of this. But certainly, as a recovery card, and again, those control decks are going to love it, this one could be really very good indeed. In at number 15, we've got Shaymin V-Star, and this one makes me feel a bit weird, because I'm putting a V-Star in this top 20, And I don't really like its V-Star power. Now that heals 120 from each of your benched grass Pokemon, and that's fine. And in grass decks that's alright. But a lot of the time nowadays, with Pokemon hitting around 220 or above, this is not going to turn a 2-hit KO into a 3-hit KO, so I'm honestly not sure how often it's going to help. But for 1 grass, 1 colourless, you do 120 plus 40 more for each prize card your opponent has taken, and that adds up super quickly. 3 prize cards, you're up to 240, that's all Pokemon V. And then 4 prize cards, you're up to 280, that's all V-Star. And with 5 prize cards, you're 320, and that'll even get most of the V-Maxes. This adds up very, very quickly, and for 2 energy, I like this. In at number 14, we've got Collapse Stadium, and this is one which is going to ruin a lot of people's days. Also, whoever decided to get Kato drawing a bunch of these stadiums is a genius, and I want to give them a big hug, because that artist is crushing it on these stadiums. Each player cannot have more than 4 bench Pokemon. If you've got more than 4, discard until you've got 4 remaining. It is a bench limiting stadium. But there are so many games where players need their full bench. So many decks that rely on having a full bench. And this is one of those ones where you can play the game. Every time you're playing, just look at your board and go, what would I do if I suddenly could only have 4 bench Pokemon? And that will show you quite how devastating this stadium can be if it's dropped at the wrong time. In at number 13, we've got CHEREN'S. You put one of your colourless Pokemon with any damage counters on it, and all cards attached to it into your hand. And this is a weird one, alright? It's a very weird one, because it's only good in colourless decks, and even then, only colourless decks that can tank a hit. But you show me something like Arceus V-Star, or any colourless V-Star we get in the future, or anything big and colourless, and this is going to end up being a super annoying card. This is one which isn't going to be for a whole bunch of decks, but the ones it is for are going to absolutely love it. In at number 12, we've got ZAMAZENTA V, and this one's just got an amazing ability. Not really loving the attack. It's kind of similar to Shaman, but it doesn't hit the key numbers as easily. And it's an extra energy, so I do not like it anywhere near as much. But it lets you discard your hand and draw 5 cards if you're willing to let your turn end. And that is very similar to Zacian, that drew 3 cards and ended your turn. And I know that Zacian let you attach any energy you found to Zacian, but remember that Zacian got played in a whole bunch of decks that weren't accelerating energy, that were just playing it for the draw. ZAMAZENTA will also see play just for the draw, and it's got a regulation mark 2 years later than Zacian. This one is going to pop up in a bunch of decks, especially ones that don't care too much about attacking. And rounding out the top 10, in at number 11, we've got Cynthia's Ambition. It's a draw card. Draw until you have 5 cards in your hand, but if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, draw until you have 8 cards in your hand. Now, we are getting to the stage now where I really like every card on this list. I'm sure you could put Cynthia higher, but I don't want to because I like all the cards above her more than I like her. Which, you know, is kind of how making these lists work. My point is, this could be an easily top 10 card or better, but it's a good draw card. What it's not going to do is see a bunch of play over, say, Professor's Research, and it's reliant on having had a Pokemon KO'd the previous turn, and it's only for decks that can kind of empty out their hand a bit so they can draw a bunch of cards. It's not for everybody, but it's a very good draw supporter that will help out a bunch of decks, and we know that very good draw supporters tend to see play. In at number 10, we've got the aforementioned Magma Basin card. Once during your turn, you can attach a fire energy from your discard to one of your bench fire Pokemon and put 2 damage counters on it. Although, like I've said, when you look at Pokemon like MOLTRES, for instance, that can actually really help. That activates the extra damage. And the fact of the matter is, fire decks moving forward are going to play this. They don't have any better options. So if you're playing a fire deck moving forward, this is going to be a card that you are absolutely going to love. It is going to take fire decks from not viable to hang on a second, that might be viable, and that alone makes it a top 10 card for me. In at number 9, we've got one of my personal very favourite cards in the set. It's EMIPOLEON. I don't like the attack. Water Arrow does 60 to one of your opponent's Pokemon, nobody cares. But the ability Emergency Surfacing is nuts. If it's in your discard pile and you've got an empty hand, bench it and draw 3 cards. At which point I actually do like the attack, because single energy 60 snipe on a basic, or a Pokemon at least that acts like a basic, it's not a basic, that's pretty cool. But the fact of the matter is, it's in the discard, you bench it, you draw 3 cards. That's great. If I can find room, I'm going to put 1 Empoleon in like every deck I make from now on, because there are going to be times in the late game where I've got 1 or 2 cards in hand and they're not the right ones. If I can play those 2 cards, I can then activate Empoleon from the discard, and all of a sudden I'm out of whatever hole I've gotten into. That's pretty sweet. In at number 8, we've got LIEPARD. And LIEPARD's weird because right now I don't like LIEPARD and I'm not going to play LIEPARD. And the reason I'm not going to play LIEPARD is because I much prefer Cinccino. Because Cinccino is basically the same card, but it's got a better attack and can be searched with Level Ball. It's as simple as that. Right now, I think Cinccino is a better card. But when we hit August, September time, Cinccino's rotating out. And I'm not going to be able to play that anymore, and then I'm still going to be left with LIEPARD that lets me discard a card from my hand and draw 2 cards. It's a great ability, we all know how good it is, and sure, I'm not going to use it before end of August, beginning of September, whenever rotation happens, but then when rotation happens, me and LIEPARD, we're going to be friends, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be friends. In at number 7, we've got Arceus V-Star, the best of the V-Star that are coming in this set. And honestly, the fact that this is only coming in at number 7 is genuinely confusing to me. Like I said, the top of this list is very, very good. And I think you could make an argument for anything from 7 upwards being number 1. We have got 7 phenomenal cards in this set. Now, Arceus V-Star has, for my money, the best of the V-Star power so far. You just leave it sitting on your bench, and then whenever you feel like it during your turn, oh yeah, now I can draw 2 cards. And sure, it's a V-Star power, it's once per game, blah, blah, blah. I can go and get any 2 cards. I can search my deck for whatever 2 cards are going to lead me to victory at this particular moment. It's too good, ladies and gentlemen. It's too good. That is a phenomenal V-Star power. But then for free colorless energy, you do 200 damage and search for free basic energy and attach them in any way you like. We saw that kind of attack was pretty gosh darn good on Pikachu and Zekrom. So you know what? Yeah, great attack, great V-Star power. This is one that you should honestly be getting pretty gosh darn excited about. This is a phenomenal V-Star. In at number 6, we've got Bibarel. And partly I am adoring the Okacheke artwork, and I make no bones about that. My favourite artist in the game, as I've told you on many occasions. But also, it's the ability Industrious Incisors. Great name, incidentally. Once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 5 cards in your hand. So, it's like a Stage 1 Cricketune, but you get extra cards. And it's also worth pointing out that unlike some of these kind of abilities, this is not limited to once during your turn. What that means is, if I've got multiple Bibarel out, I can use this multiple times. Cricketune is specifically limited to once during your turn, regardless how many Cricketune you've got. Bibarel isn't, and I like this more than I like LIEPARD. I think this is going to draw me more cards in the long run. I'm a big fan. Go Bibarel. But I think the top 5 even is a step above the couple we've just talked about. In at number 5, we've got Double Turbo Energy. It is a double energy that can be attached to anything, but it means you do 20 less damage. Firstly, there are going to be a bunch of Pokemon that don't care where that 20 damage doesn't stop them hitting a key number. And then secondly, you've got all those Pokemon that are just not going to care because they don't do damage. Something like an Arceus V, for instance, which just accelerates a bunch of energy for 2 colorless energy but doesn't do any damage, is not going to care here. This is going to make a whole bunch of decks viable that weren't before. In at number 4, we've got Manaphy and its amazing Hyaganosuke artwork. This is a bench barrier. Or Wave Veil, but it's bench barrier. And since Mew rotated, we've needed one of these. And it really is as simple as that. We haven't had a bench barrier, and that has allowed some decks like Jolteon, for instance, to be far too good, to be able to hit the bench far too easily, and be able to take multiple prizes far too often. And what this is it's a basic Pokemon that sits on your bench and stops your opponent doing that. And it really is as simple as that. That is the entire point of the card. We don't like the attack. We're not really going to be attacking with it. The only reason we're playing this is because it protects the bench, and we have been calling out for this since rotation. And it's still only number 4. In at number 3, we've got Choice Belt, and I know there are a bunch of people who are going to put this as their number 1 card from the set, and frankly, I cannot fault you. It lets you do an extra 30 damage to Pokemon V, and that does include both V-Star and V-Max. And the fact of the matter is, this is going to be a card that sees a huge amount of play, because it can be used on anyone. It's not only for Pokemon that don't have a rule box. Pokemon V, V-Star, V-Max, whatever, can use this as well. It's going to allow you to hit those key numbers. It's going to be big. It's just ridiculous. This is going to see so much play. There are going to be so many KOs gotten with this that wouldn't have been gotten otherwise. And it's still only in number 3. In at number 2, we've got Lumineon. Yeah, that should probably be number 1, right? Like I say, top of this set, phenomenal. It's Tapu Lele. It's Tapu Lele's ability that lets you search a supporter card from your deck. And no, it's not quite as good as Tapu Lele was, purely because when we had Tapu Lele, we could use a supporter card on turn 1 going first. We cannot do that here. You've got to wait a turn to use supporters. But it's still a basic Pokemon that can be searched out with something like Quick Ball, which will allow you to get the perfect supporter card you want every time. It's nuts. It's going to be a staple in every single deck. It's phenomenal. So what could possibly be better than the cards we mentioned so far? Ultra Ball. And I know this is cheating a little bit, and I'm sorry. But the fact of the matter is, although Ultra Ball is a reprint, and no arguments here, Ultra Ball is a reprint, we've been without Ultra Ball for a while. The last print of Ultra Ball we had was in Shining Legends, which was a few years ago at this stage. And I don't like putting reprints in my top 20 list, and I certainly don't like putting them at number 1. I want to put a nice new card like Lumineon number 1, although that's basically Tapu Lele, honestly. But the fact of the matter is, Ultra Ball is, by far, the biggest, most important, most impactful card coming out of Brilliant Stars. It is going to be a 4 of in the vast majority of decks. It is going to increase consistency for everybody. And the fact of the matter is, we can all sit and argue about the fact that maybe it should be a newer card, but the one thing I feel very, very, very confident about is that everyone is going to play Ultra Ball. And I mean everyone is going to play Ultra Ball. It is proper job, over the top, nuts good. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's my top 20 from Brilliant Stars, and now it's over to you guys. Remember my rules. If you want to put a card down, you got to put a card up. If you want to put a card up, you got to put a card down. You can't just say so-and-so should be higher. You've got to tell me where it should go and which cards you're dropping. And if you do want to go and make a full top 20 list, or we could be friends at that point, ladies and gentlemen. That would be wonderful. So let me know what you think about all of these cards and tell me what your favourite card in the set is personally. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.